Hi guys, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you find this content informative, please subscribe to the channel for more updates. Imagine changing an entire professional sports league before you've even played 2 full seasons. Imagine selling out arenas across the country, breaking television records that had stood for years, becoming one of the most talked about athletes in America, and earning a place alongside names like LeBron James and Lionel Messi, not because of championships but because of your impact. That isn't a Hollywood script. That's the reality of CaitlinClark. But here's the question almost nobody wants to answer honestly. If one player could generate millions of new viewers, fill arenas from coast to coast, and spark conversations far beyond basketball, why does it still feel like the WNBA is struggling to fully embrace the biggest opportunity in its history? The numbers are impossible to ignore. Television ratings skyrocketed. Ticket demand reached levels the league had never experienced. Merchandise flew off the shelves. Every city CaitlinClark visited suddenly had fans lining up hours before tip-off. Even people who had never watched a WNBA game before were suddenly paying attention. It looked like the beginning of a new era. Yet as excitement grew, so did controversy. Debates over officiating, scheduling, player treatment, media narratives, and the league's long-term strategy quickly took center stage. Supporters argued the WNBA should build aggressively around its newest superstar. Others insisted the league's success belonged to many players who had spent years laying the foundation. Meanwhile, every game, every headline, and every viral clip seemed to fuel another heated discussion. So what is the truth? Is CaitlinClark simply an incredible rookie enjoying a historic rise? Or is she the kind of once-in-a-generation athlete capable of transforming an entire sport, just as LeBron James did for the NBA and Lionel Messi did for Major League Soccer? In this video, we'll separate the facts from the headlines, examine the numbers that changed women's basketball, explore the debates surrounding Clark's rise, and answer the one question that could shape the future of the WNBA. Because history shows that generational athletes don't come along very often, and when they do, the decisions made around them can change a league forever. Long before CaitlinClark ever stepped onto a WNBA court, the league was already fighting one of the toughest battles in professional sports, earning consistent attention in a crowded entertainment landscape. Since its launch in 1997, the WNBA had produced legendary athletes, unforgettable championship runs, and some of the most skilled basketball the sport had ever seen. Stars like Lisa Leslie, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Candace Parker, Maya Moore, Breena Stewart, Aja Wilson, and Sabrina Ionescu helped establish the league's credibility, proving year after year that women's basketball deserved a much larger audience. And slowly that audience was growing. Television ratings were improving. Social media engagement was climbing. Attendance had begun to recover after difficult years and corporate sponsors were investing more heavily than ever before. The foundation was being built one season at a time, but despite all that progress, the WNBA still struggled to break into the mainstream conversation. Most games attracted loyal fans, but rarely captured the attention of casual sports viewers across the country. Then came college basketball's biggest phenomenon. At the University of Iowa, CaitlinClark wasn't just winning games, she was changing viewing habits. Her deep three-pointers, fearless passing, and ability to take over games turned ordinary matchups into national events. Millions of people who hadn't watched women's basketball before suddenly couldn't look away. Her NCAA tournament games shattered television records, packed arenas, and dominated sports headlines for weeks. It became clear that fans weren't simply following a talented player. They were witnessing someone capable of changing the business of basketball itself. By the time Clark declared for the WNBA draft, expectations had reached levels almost never seen for a rookie. The league wasn't searching for a new star anymore. It was preparing for an unprecedented spotlight. What no one could predict, however, was just how quickly that spotlight would transform nearly every corner of the WNBA. And once the season began, the numbers told a story that even the biggest optimists never saw coming. When CaitlinClark finally entered the WNBA, many expected excitement. Few expected a complete business transformation. Rookie seasons are usually about adjusting to a faster game, learning from veterans, and proving you belong. Clark certainly had to do all of that, but something far bigger was happening off the court. Almost overnight, she became the center of one of the biggest commercial surges the league had ever experienced. The first signs appeared on television. Games featuring the Indiana Fever suddenly drew audiences that dwarfed typical WNBA broadcasts. Networks that once viewed women's basketball as niche programming found themselves airing some of the most-watched games in league history. Even casual sports fans, people who had never followed the WNBA before, were tuning in just to see what the hype was about. Every spectacular three-pointer, pinpoint assist, or clutch performance fueled even more interest. The excitement didn't stop there. Every arena Clark visited became an event. Home crowds were electric, but what happened on the road was even more remarkable. Teams that had struggled to fill seats suddenly announced sellouts. Several franchises moved games to larger venues simply to accommodate the overwhelming demand. Fans traveled hundreds of miles just for the chance to watch one rookie play. That's a level of influence very few athletes in any sport ever achieve. Then came the merchandise. Clark's Indiana Fever jersey became one of the fastest-selling jerseys the WNBA had ever seen, introducing thousands of first-time customers to the league. Sponsors took notice. National media couldn't stop talking about her. Sports debate shows that rarely mentioned women's basketball suddenly discussed the WNBA almost every day. But perhaps the most important number wasn't found in ticket sales or television ratings. It was the number of new fans entering the sport for the very first time. CaitlinClark wasn't just helping the Indiana Fever win attention, she was expanding the entire WNBA audience. And with millions of new eyes suddenly watching, an even bigger question began to emerge. Could the league turn this extraordinary moment into lasting success, or was it about to let a once-in-a-generation opportunity slip away? Breaking records is one thing. Changing the way the world sees a sport is something entirely different. That's why Time magazine's recognition of CaitlinClark carried far more weight than many people initially realized. This wasn't simply another award celebrating an outstanding rookie season. It was a statement that her influence had already extended far beyond the basketball court. Every year, Time recognizes people who leave a lasting mark on culture, business, politics, entertainment, and sports. The publication isn't focused solely on statistics or championships. Instead, it asks a much bigger question: who has changed the conversation? In Clark's case, the answer seemed impossible to ignore. At just 22 years old, she had become one of the biggest names in American sports, attracting millions of new viewers and introducing an entirely new audience to the WNBA. What made the recognition even more remarkable was the company she found herself alongside. Athletes like LeBron James and Lionel Messi didn't earn global recognition simply because they were great players. They reshaped their leagues, attracted new fans, and influenced the business of sports itself. By placing CaitlinClark in that same conversation, Time wasn't predicting what she might accomplish years from now. It was acknowledging that her impact was already being felt across the entire sports landscape. Of course, not everyone interpreted the recognition the same way. Supporters saw it as well-deserved acknowledgement of an athlete who had dramatically expanded the league's visibility. Others argued that many WNBA stars had spent decades building the foundation that made this moment possible. Both perspectives fueled passionate discussions across television, podcasts, and social media, making Clark one of the most debated athletes in professional sports. But regardless of where people stood, one fact became impossible to dismiss. CaitlinClark was no longer just a rookie trying to prove herself. She had become the face of one of the biggest conversations in sports, and with that attention came enormous expectations. The spotlight was brighter than ever, and soon people began asking an even tougher question: was the WNBA truly prepared for everything that came with it? With record-breaking ratings, sold-out arenas, and millions of new fans discovering the league, the WNBA suddenly found itself in a position every professional sports organization dreams about. Years of steady progress had led to a moment that could redefine its future, but as the excitement reached new heights, so did the criticism. Instead of every headline celebrating unprecedented growth, many began asking whether the league was moving quickly enough to capitalize on its biggest opportunity. One of the first concerns centered around scheduling. Fans and analysts questioned why some of the season's most anticipated matchups weren't receiving prime television exposure. Others pointed to the demanding travel schedule, back-to-back games, and limited recovery time that players faced throughout the season. Critics argued that a league enjoying its highest level of attention should provide an experience that matched the growing expectations of both players and fans. Then came the conversations surrounding officiating and the physical style of play. CaitlinClark's games frequently became the focus of debate after several hard fouls and controversial calls generated millions of views online. Some fans believed she wasn't receiving enough protection from referees, while others argued that the physicality simply reflected the intensity of professional basketball and that every rookie must earn respect. The discussions quickly spread across sports television and social media, creating headlines almost as often as the games themselves. Another major topic was player salaries. Clark's rookie contract became a talking point not because it violated league rules, it followed the existing collective bargaining agreement, but because many observers questioned whether the league's compensation model still reflected its rapidly growing commercial value. As television ratings, sponsorships, and merchandise sales climbed, discussions about future revenue sharing became louder than ever. Regardless of where people stood on these issues, one thing became increasingly clear. The conversation had shifted from whether CaitlinClark could transform the WNBA to whether the WNBA could fully embrace the transformation unfolding before it. And to answer that question, many people looked toward history, where two familiar names offered a compelling blueprint. If the WNBA wanted to understand what to do next, it didn't have to invent a new strategy. The blueprint had already been written, twice. Sports history has shown that when a truly generational athlete arrives, success isn't determined by talent alone. It's determined by how quickly the league recognizes the moment and builds around it. The first example came in 2003, when LeBron James entered the NBA. Even before he played his first professional game, the excitement surrounding him was unlike anything basketball had seen in years. But the NBA didn't simply hope that fans would find him. The league aggressively scheduled his games for national television, expanded marketing campaigns, promoted new rivalries, and made LeBron one of the faces of professional basketball almost immediately. As television audiences grew, so did sponsorships, merchandise sales, and the overall value of the league. The NBA understood that a once-in-a-generation player could accelerate growth for everyone, not just one franchise. 2 decades later, Major League Soccer faced a remarkably similar opportunity when Lionel Messi arrived in the United States. His impact was immediate. Stadiums sold out within minutes, jersey sales exploded, streaming subscriptions surged, and international attention reached levels MLS had never experienced before. Rather than treating it as a temporary wave of excitement, the league leaned into the moment. It expanded global marketing efforts, highlighted marquee matchups, and positioned Messi as the centerpiece of a broader strategy to introduce millions of new fans to American soccer. That history is what makes CaitlinClark's arrival so fascinating. The signs look strikingly familiar. Television ratings reached record levels, attendance surged across the league, merchandise sales soared, and conversations about the WNBA suddenly dominated mainstream sports media. The opportunity was obvious. The real question was whether the league could respond with the same urgency shown by the NBA and MLS. Because history offers one important lesson: generational athletes don't keep the spotlight forever. They create a window of opportunity. The leagues that recognize that window and act decisively often experience lasting growth. Those that hesitate risk watching that extraordinary moment slowly fade away, and that's exactly where the next chapter of this story begins. As CaitlinClark's popularity continued to soar, the conversation surrounding her became about much more than basketball. What began as excitement over a record-breaking rookie quickly evolved into one of the most polarizing debates in modern sports. Every spectacular performance seemed to generate just as many arguments as highlights, and the attention surrounding the league became increasingly divided. Part of the reason was simple: Clark brought millions of first-time viewers to the WNBA. Many of these new fans were experiencing the league for the first time, while longtime supporters had spent years advocating for women's basketball before the sudden surge in popularity. As these two audiences came together, they often viewed the league through very different lenses. Some believed Clark was the primary reason for the league's explosive growth. Others argued that her success was only possible because generations of WNBA stars had spent decades building the sport's foundation. Both perspectives contained elements of truth, but online discussions rarely left room for nuance. Social media only intensified the divide. Every hard foul, controversial referee decision, post-game interview, or viral clip sparked thousands of comments, videos, and debates. Television analysts weighed in, former players shared their opinions, and podcasts dissected every headline. In many cases, the discussion shifted away from the basketball itself and toward broader conversations about media coverage, player recognition, marketing strategies, and the future direction of the league. It's also important to separate verified facts from speculation. Throughout Clark's rookie season and beyond, numerous rumors circulated online about player rivalries, locker room tensions, and alleged conflicts. While those stories generated enormous engagement, many were based on fan theories or incomplete information rather than confirmed reporting. That's why it's essential to distinguish between documented events and internet speculation. Ironically, the very debates that divided fans also demonstrated something remarkable: people were paying attention. The WNBA was no longer fighting for visibility. It had become one of the most talked-about leagues in sports. The challenge was no longer attracting an audience. It was finding a way to unite that audience around the game itself before the momentum faded. The biggest question surrounding the WNBA is no longer whether CaitlinClark changed the league. The evidence is already there. Record television audiences, sold-out arenas, booming merchandise sales, and millions of new fans have fundamentally altered the league's business landscape. The real question now is far more important. What happens next? Because history has shown that moments like this don't last forever. They either become the foundation of a new era, or they're remembered as opportunities that slipped away. Fortunately, there are plenty of reasons for optimism. The WNBA is entering one of the most exciting periods in its history. New media rights agreements promise significantly greater revenue, giving the league more resources to improve player salaries, enhance travel conditions, invest in marketing, and upgrade facilities. Expansion franchises are also on the horizon, bringing professional women's basketball to new cities and introducing the sport to even larger audiences. These are the kinds of long-term investments that successful leagues make when they believe their future is brighter than ever. At the same time, major challenges remain. The next collective bargaining agreement will likely shape the league for years to come. Players are expected to push for higher salaries and improved working conditions that better reflect the league's growing commercial success. League executives will also face important decisions about scheduling, marketing, international expansion, and how to convert millions of first-time viewers into lifelong fans. None of these choices will be easy, but each one will help determine whether this remarkable surge becomes permanent. And then, there's CaitlinClark herself. At just the beginning of her professional career, she's still developing as a player while carrying expectations that few athletes have ever experienced. Whether she wins championships or breaks even more records, her influence has already reached beyond the basketball court. Years from now, people may look back on this period as the moment women's basketball truly entered the mainstream. Not because of one player alone, and not because of one extraordinary season, but because an entire league finally had the opportunity to become something bigger than ever before. The window is open, but how the WNBA responds today will determine how history remembers this era tomorrow. When historians look back at this era of women's basketball, they probably won't begin with a single game, a single record, or even a single highlight. They'll remember it as the moment everything started to change. CaitlinClark arrived with unprecedented attention, but what followed became much bigger than one player. It became a test of whether an entire league could seize a once-in-a-generation opportunity. The numbers have already made history. Television ratings reached heights few believed possible. Arenas across the country were packed with fans eager to witness something special. Merchandise sales soared, media coverage expanded, and millions of people who had never watched a WNBA game before suddenly became part of the conversation. Those achievements can't be erased, and they prove that the appetite for women's basketball is greater than many ever imagined. But history doesn't stop when records are broken. It asks what happened next. Can the WNBA transform millions of curious first-time viewers into lifelong supporters? Will future investments in player salaries, marketing, facilities, expansion teams, and television coverage create a stronger league for generations to come? Or will this incredible surge eventually be remembered as a moment when the opportunity was larger than the response? Perhaps that's why Time's recognition of CaitlinClark carried such significance. It wasn't simply celebrating an outstanding athlete, it was recognizing someone who had already shifted the direction of an entire sport. Whether her legacy ultimately resembles that of LeBron James in the NBA or Lionel Messi in Major League Soccer won't be decided by one season or even one championship. It will be determined by what happens over the next decade. One thing, however, is already certain. CaitlinClark's story is no longer about potential. She has already changed the conversation surrounding women's basketball. Now the responsibility belongs to everyone, the league, its players, its partners, and its fans to decide what comes next. So what do you think? Has CaitlinClark permanently transformed the WNBA, or is the league still only at the beginning of its biggest chapter? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of this story is still being written.
If you made it this far, you already know this story is far from over. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this changes everything, or are people overreacting? Hit the like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. It really helps push videos like this out to more viewers. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because things are moving fast and there's a lot more coming. I want to hear your take. Does this shift the balance, or will defenses find another way to respond? Share this video with someone who needs to see this, especially if they've been following this story closely. Turn on notifications so you're always the first to know when new content drops. If you've got a different perspective, drop it below. I read a lot of the comments and the discussions here are always interesting. Let me know what you think happens next. because this could go in a lot of directions. And if you enjoy content that breaks things down in a simple, engaging way, stick around. There's plenty more on the way. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.